Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to continue looking at President Nelson's talk called Rejoice in the Gift of Priesthood Keys. And in the last video, we were talking about this interesting timing of when him and President Oaks were called and the vacancies that they filled, how the previous two apostles had died exactly 1 year apart from each other. On January 11th of 1983 and then 1984. So January 11th, 111. And we were talking about those kind of things. There were also some other things I meant to mention in that video, but the video was kind of going longer than I wanted it to, that also had to do with timing that he mentions in his talk. And you can see him right here in the footnotes, and we'll go over that. And we're going to, we're going to talk about some interesting stuff here. We're going to be talking about Christ and what we can expect to see when he comes, like what he's going to look like, as well as the pulpits of the Kirtland Temple and how the pulpits aren't just like any old design. It wasn't just like artistic. It wasn't just like, it's more than just like revelation of like, okay, build these pulpits like this. There's like history to it going back to Adam-ondi-Ahman. And I think we've talked about this on the channel before, but the pulpits go all the way back to the beginning of this earth with Adam and his altar at Adam-ondi-Ahman. So we'll look at that in just a second. Now, really quick before we get into it, I've been meaning to do this for a while. I have a subscriber, Trevor Stevens, that sent me this wood carving. And it's purple because it's in my girls' room. Anytime I get anything, whether it's from Artza or whatever, they always take it. So they have one of them has the carving that he sent me in her room, and she has purple lights, but she has this on her, bookshelf, and it's really neat. Well, he's made a business out of this. It's called Forge, Build, and Design. And here's his here's his website. Okay. So he does all sorts of stuff, church things and others. Like here's a section for temples. He sent me an email showing some of the stuff that he's done. Here's like the church symbol, or at least like part of the church symbol, the top part. Here's the Layton, Utah temple, Orem, Utah temple. And Trevor, I sent the email to you, but I'm going to ask for you, if you can, to do the Kirtland Temple because I want that. In fact, everybody in the comments below, what would you like if you were going to purchase something from Trevor from Forge, Build, and Design? What temple or what would you like to have as a wood carving? Put it below, and I'm sure that he can make that happen. He said that if you use the code Jared5, then you'll get 5% off. So I'll put the link for his website in the description box below. It looks like right now he has Manti, Salt Lake City, Layton, Bountiful, St. George, Orem. I'm not sure if he can do more, but he'll let me know. But just put it in the comments below, and I told him to respond to your comments. So look forward to that. Really, 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 really cool. Okay, so let's get back to President Nelson's talk. Okay, I'm gonna reread this first part. My dear brothers and sisters, today is an historic day for President Dallin H. Oaks and me. It was 40 years ago, on April 7th of all days, April 7th, 1984, when we were sustained to the quorum of the 12 apostles. Okay. Now, after I did that video, comments were coming in, people were pointing out, and we've talked about this before, but we were talking about the fact that it's been 40 years, and 40 is seen a number of different ways in the scriptures, sometimes as like a time of trying and testing and things like that. I focus more on the fact that it seems to be a number of cleansing because of the flood of Noah. It was 40 days and 40 nights, and it cleansed the earth. Israel wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. It was a cleansing because the older generations that still had, worldliness in them from Egypt, they weren't permitted to continue to the promised land. It was only the newer generations. So in the fact that this happened, that their anniversary happened the day before the eclipse, and the eclipse seeming to be like a bridge, kind of like what Elder Stevenson said. He was talking about bridges, and he was talking about bookends. He talked about the bookend of like when you have a suspension bridge and you have like the two towers, they're like bookend towers. I thought it was interesting that he used the word bookend. I don't know if he watches my channel or not. He was like trying to give me a correction, but You had that first eclipse in 2017, and this one the day after conference and the day after President Nelson and President Oaks have their 40-year anniversary. So like this 40-year period, don't know. I mean, you make of it what you want, but that's a lot of stuff to be happening at the same time. On top of that, how they started, how these two apostles before them, Elder LeGrand Richards and Elder Marky Peterson, they passed away exactly 1 year from each other. And there was a flood in Salt Lake City in between their deaths. And then President Nelson and President Oaks were called to the 12. It's, my gosh. Okay, continuing. We have rejoiced in each and every general conference since then, including this one. We have once again been blessed with the sacred outpouring of the Spirit. I hope you will repeatedly study the messages of this conference throughout the coming months. You don't have to ask me twice. We will be doing that, President Nelson, here on this channel. And I hope you guys do it on your own, obviously. Do it personally and on your own. Okay, when I was born, and then he has a footnote for that, September 9th, 1924. And we've noticed a lot of things when it comes to his birthday and things that have happened recently around his birthday. Notably, Queen Elizabeth passing away the day before his birthday, where he became the oldest living prophet and apostle, or the longest living prophet or apostle of this dispensation, and other things. Okay, when I was born, there were 6 functioning temples in the church, 1 each in St. George, Logan, Manti, and Salt Lake City, Utah, as well as in Cardston, Alberta, Canada, and Laie, Hawaii. 2 earlier temples had functioned briefly in Kirtland, Ohio, and Nauvoo, Illinois. As the body of the church moved west, the saints were forced to leave those 2 temples behind. The Nauvoo temple was destroyed by an arsonist fire. It was rebuilt and then rededicated by President Gordon B. Hinckley. And then there's a footnote. The footnote says, the dedication of the rebuilt Nauvoo, Illinois temple by President Gordon B. Hinckley occurred on June 27th, 2002. The 158th anniversary of the martyrdom of Joseph in Hiram Smith. So you guys, in the last video and in other videos, we've talked about timing and how it seems like there is significance when things are done on anniversaries, or when you have these like interesting numbers, 7, 40, things like that. There's a lot of order to the Lord in his work, and that includes numbers. And here you have President Nelson bringing it up again. He brings up this interesting fact in footnote 1 about the 1 year apart on January 11th. Here you have in footnote 3 talking about the 158th anniversary of the martyrdom of Joseph and Hiram Smith. And then continuing, last month we announced that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints had purchased the Kirtland Temple. Thank goodness. Along with several historic sites in Nauvoo. Oh, by the way, I think we're going to make a trip to Nauvoo in summer. I'll keep you guys posted because I would love to meet more of you. I don't know exactly when. I probably won't say until like just before, just because I don't want to like have like a ton of people come. I have to try and keep it like controlled so it doesn't like get out of hand. But anyway, I would love to meet with you if you're in Nauvoo or going to Nauvoo around the time that I do. So I'll keep you posted. Continuing, we greatly appreciate the cordial and mutually beneficial discussions we had with leaders from Community of Christ that led to this agreement. I'm still on the high. I haven't come back down off the mountain. Like Jessica says, I'm still on the high from going there. I think I still would be feeling this way regardless of the eclipse, but that just like heightened it. Okay, the Kirtland Temple has unusual significance in the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Several events that took place there had been prophesied for millennia and were essential for the Lord's restored church to fulfill its Latter-day mission. The most important of these occurred on Easter Sunday, which on the Hebrew calendar, it was also first fruits. Easter is essentially the Christian observance of first fruits, right? Before Christ, you had first fruits where you would bring the first fruits, the first like barley to the temple to sacrifice. And then it would continue up until Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks, Pentecost. But we know that basically first fruits was pointing forward in time to when Christ would be the first to be resurrected. And so in that year, on April 3rd, 1836, it was both Easter and first fruits. I have a spreadsheet. I'm not going to pull it up now. It's not always the case because the Christians calculate it differently than the Jews. And so there's like a difference sometimes on when those two coincide. It's not always like that. But in that year, it was. Okay, so, and there's a footnote for that. Footnote 4 says just 1 week, or in other words, 7 days after the prophet Joseph Smith dedicated the Kirtland Temple. I was thinking, you guys, about the eclipse and how we had the eclipse in Utah in October last year, 2023. And remember what happened with that one. You had the eclipse, and then 7 days later on the... Sorry. What you had was 7 days earlier, before the eclipse, on October 7th, the attack in Israel. And 7 days before that was General Conference. So General Conference, 7 days go by, you have the war that starts in Israel, and then 7 days go by, you have the eclipse in Utah. Now, we are within this like 7 week period. It has not been a week since the eclipse over Kirtland. I'm not saying anything's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if something did. In fact, the news today is that it seems like Iran's going to hit Israel in retaliation for Israel attacking their like embassy annex in Syria, if I remember right, in Damascus. So we'll see if that leads to some kind of escalation. But I don't know. We just may want to pay attention between now and Monday. Okay, so anyway, so see how he keeps like bringing up like these like time, periods of time between things. So in the first case, it's exactly 1 year between the death of these two apostles, and then President Nelson and Oaks get called to the apostleship. And then the rededication, or the dedication of the rebuilt Nauvoo Temple, was on the 158th anniversary of the martyrdom of Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith. And then just 7 days after the dedication of the Kirtland Temple, 7 days, that's when you have this experience on Easter and Bikurim, also known as first fruits. Okay, on that day, Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery experienced a series of remarkable visitations. First, the Lord Jesus Christ appeared. The prophet recorded that the Savior's, quote, eyes were as a flame of fire, the hair of his head was white like the pure snow, his countenance shone above the brightness of the sun, and his voice was as the sound of the rushing of great waters. Now, President Nelson didn't have to like put this in his talk. He could just be trying to make his talk more interesting and help us like visualize it, maybe help bring us back in time and like have us visualize what it would have looked like. But one thing that stood out to me is I don't know about you, but when we think about the second coming and when Christ appears, I think a lot of people are expecting him to look like this. This is how they depict him in the Book of Mormon video series, with brown hair and a dark beard and stuff like that, dark eyebrows. And I don't know, that maybe that's the case. I don't know. But President Nelson is pointing out this is what he looked like when he came to Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery. Remember, he's a resurrected being. He's a celestial resurrected being. And we've talked about, oh dang, I don't have the quote up, but I think it was Bruce R. McConkie. Dang. Oh, I'll do another video if I need to. I think it was Bruce R. McConkie was talking, or maybe it was Joseph Fielding Smith, because Joseph Fielding Smith really spelled out a lot of different points of doctrine and talked about a lot of different things. And he pointed out that resurrected beings, they glow, like they like emit light, and they glow. And I think part of that is probably, it goes along with their hair being white, I should have brought up the description of the angel Moroni, but he, brought light with him, and I think he had white hair. But anyway, instead of expecting to see this, maybe we should expect to see what President Nelson just described in his talk. So Again, I just went to the Kirtland Temple. Make sure to like my Facebook page and follow it, because I have additional content here, like these cool panoramic photos and 360 photo bubbles and stuff like that. But this is the first floor of the Kirtland Temple, and this is where Christ and Moses and Elijah and Elias appeared, was right here. It's like one of the few places that you can pinpoint. Jessica was like, this is one of the few places you can pinpoint where Christ appeared. Here, the Sacred Grove, also the Salt Lake Temple to Lorenzo Snow. Just interestingly, just outside the Celestial Room for some reason. But in this case, on top of these pulpits, and we're going to talk about the pulpits more in just a minute. So one thing that impressed me is when you go into the visitor center, they have pictures of the visitation of Christ right here to Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery. And you have another picture here. I don't know if this is supposed to be Christ or one of the other prophets. I'm not exactly sure. But this struck me because I was like, these stories are being told again, because my understanding is that the Community of Christ didn't like really talk about this when you came to visit the Kirtland Temple. And I doubt that they had these paintings up, because I think these are paintings from our church, like members of our church that painted these. So here I have it bigger. Well, that's a lot bigger. Let me zoom out. So here you have it. And, maybe this is what we can expect Christ to look like when he comes, and maybe not be surprised, again, maybe he will look like this, and does it really matter? No, but it is nice to kind of like not be shocked if you're expecting this, and then he ends up looking like this. And not just him, not just Christ, but all the resurrected saints are going to look something like this. We're going to have our family back, all those that have passed away that are in the first resurrection, that are worthy of the first resurrection. We're going to see them, and they're going to look different. Your grandma and grandpa that passed away, they're not going to be old people with like curly hair, curly gray hair, wrinkles and stuff. They're going to, I assume, look very young and probably in their prime, like their perfect form. And not just that, but you can expect for them maybe to be glowing, and their eyes to be glowing. I don't know if this is just like poetic language when it says eyes were as a flame of fire. Like, I don't expect their eyes to have like fire, but like glowing in some kind of way. But I think this is pretty literal. Eyes were as a flame of fire, so like glowing, I would assume, in some kind of way, or like maybe their just eyes are like really striking, maybe not glowing. I don't know, striking eyes. The hair of his head was white like the pure snow. So yeah, white hair. His countenance shone above the brightness of the sun, and his voice was as the sound of the rushing of great waters. So anyway, here's the other one that's in the visitor. Excuse me, the other one that's in the visitor center. It has like this yellow down here that's glowing. So, Christ was working on some kind of gold thing of workman, like kind of gold. I can't remember how it's described, but standing on top of a gold thing. So maybe this is supposed to be Christ as well, coming down to the prophet Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery. I looked up this. It doesn't give any additional details. In this case, this painting was by Gary E. Smith. And I really like it because this one shows it has like the veils that were in the Kirtland Temple, hanging down. So this is a unique painting, and I appreciate that detail. Here's another one. So, and then here's this one too. So neat. Okay, so was there anything else I wanted to cover in this one? During this visitation, the Lord affirmed his identity. He said, I am the first and the last. I am he who liveth. I am he who was slain. I am your advocate with the Father. Now, this is for me, this is particularly poignant, I guess, when he says, I am he who was slain, as he's standing on top of the pulpits. And the reason why is because the pulpits are essentially patterned after the altar of Adam. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I mean. So we're in a book called Life of Heber C. Kimball, biography, written in 1888 by Orris Neff Whitney, poet, philosopher, and apostle. And as far as I know, this is the only place that says this, what I'm about to share with you. You can access this for free. This is archive.org. Just look up Life of Heber C. Kimball by Orris Neff Whitney. Okay, we're going down to page 221. I'm going to read a little bit before the part that I want to highlight, just because I think it's good to have like the context of how this is being portrayed in the book. And I think it's good to review some of these things. Okay, an election riot in Gallatin, Davies County. Gallatin, as you can tell, it's in Davies County, so it's right there it's pretty close to Adam-ondi-Ahman. And we drove through there with Tamara when I went to go visit her, and she was talking all about this. This was like a big thing, this election day riot. An election riot in Gallatin, Davies County, on the 6th of August, 1838, where a combined effort was made to prevent the Mormons from voting, and several of the brethren were under the necessity of using force to defend themselves against their bullying assailants, was made the pretext for further outrages against the community to which they belonged. The saints in that locality, being helplessly in the minority, were at the mercy of the mob which now rose against them. One of the methods employed by the leaders of the lawless banditti to enlist sympathy for their own cause and arouse the public mind against their victims was to destroy property belonging to non-Mormons, their own followers in some instances, and then ride through the country advertising it was the work of the Mormons, against whom any tale, however false or atrocious, was readily believed. Some of the mob even fired upon a church while its occupants were worshiping on the Sabbath day, and then spread the alarm that the Mormons had quote-unquote riz and were destroying property, demolishing churches, and interfering with free religious worship. These atrocious falsehoods, worthy only of fiends incarnate, bore legitimate fruit in deeds equally devilish and appalling. The people rose en masse, the saints were driven from their homes, their houses plundered and burned, their fields laid waste, and men, women, and children fled for their lives in all directions, pursued by their merciless oppressors. So again, this is in Davies County. This is the county where Adam-ondi-Ahman is. Okay, so we're getting to the part with the altars in just a minute. What followed, Heber's record thus relates, quote, "After hearing of the mobbing, burning, and robbing in Gallatin, Davies County, in the region roundabout, the brethren of Caldwell went directly to Adam-ondi-Ahman, which is on the west fork of Grand River. Thomas B. Marsh, David W. Patton, Brigham Young, myself, Parley P. Pratt, and John Taylor amongst the number. When we arrived there, we found the prophet Joseph, Hiram Smith, and Sidney Rigdon, with hundreds of others of the saints preparing to defend themselves from the mob who were threatening the destruction of our people. Men, women, and children were fleeing to that place for safety from every direction. Their houses and property were burnt, and they had to flee half naked, crying, and frightened nigh unto death to save their lives. While there, we laid out a city on a high elevated piece of land." So this would be Spring Hill. When you go to Adam-ondi-Ahman, you have Tower Hill, and then you keep going a ways, and then if you keep following like this trail, like you go to the parking lot, you follow this trail, it ends up going up to Spring Hill. While there, we laid out a city. In fact, hold on, I'm going to show you a picture. Okay, here it is. Here's a picture of Spring Hill. We didn't walk up that way. We were all pretty tired at that point because we had been to Hans Mill, and we went to Far West, and then we came here, and and there's not like a lot of hiking. It's not like it's like really far, but by that point we were kind of tired once we got to this point. But this is Spring Hill, and this is the area that we're talking about where the city was going to be laid if you walk up that way. Here's the parking lot, right? You park up there, you look this way, here's the valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman down here, and then there's like a trail that goes off this way. This is Tamara, by the way. There's Tamara. And thank you again, Tamara and Jared, for letting us come and be with you and you showing us the sights. So there's a trail that goes off that way. And then right here, if I remember right, I think this is the picture I took of like down here in this area is where it was identified that Christ would have appeared to Adam, and somewhere in this area where Adam's altar was, somewhere around here. Tamara said that most likely what happened is that it was, once it was identified, it was buried. No one really knows, I don't think, what happened to the altar, but she suggested, and I think people have talked about that, they probably buried it, but it's like somewhere over here, or possibly on top of this hill, or on the, like this right here. Okay, so let's go back to what we were reading. Okay, while there, we laid out a city on a high elevated piece of land. So again, this right here, up here, and set the stakes for the four corners of a temple block, which was dedicated. Now, it says, and Tamara pointed this out, it's a temple block, not a temple. So it's not like far west where you have like the four cornerstones, the block that the temple would be on, which was dedicated, Brother Brigham Young being mouth. There were from 300 to 500 men present on the occasion under arms. This elevated spot was probably from 250 to 500 feet above the level of Grand River, so that one could look east, west, north, or south as far as the eye could reach. It was one of the most beautiful places I ever beheld. Okay, now here's the part right here. The prophet Joseph called upon Brother Brigham, myself, and others, saying, "Brethren, come, go along with me, and I will show you something." He led us a short distance to a place where the ruins of 3 altars built of stone. Okay, the ruins of 3 altars built of stone, one above the other, and one standing a little back of the other, like unto the pulpits in the Kirtland Temple, representing the order of 3 grades of priesthood. There, said Joseph, is the place where Adam offered up sacrifice after he was cast out of the garden. The altar stood at the highest point of the bluff. I went and examined the place several times while I remained there. Oh yeah, so the highest point of the bluff. So let me go back to that picture. So right about here, like where I'm standing, like somewhere over here. So you guys, if you didn't know that before, if you've gone to Adam-ondi-Ahman, you might want to go again, or if you do end up going, just know that up here somewhere on Tower Hill is where you would have had the altars of the altars of Adam. So again, a lot of times I think when we picture the altar of Adam, we picture something like this, just like a simple altar, you know. And that's typically how it's depicted. And I think I'm gonna have to look into this more. I think there may have been like a couple, like another altar, like one for like kneeling like this, but then also another one or 3 for like burnt offerings, you know, because you have like the different types of altars, one for sacrifice, but then one for kneeling at. So anyway, you know, and maybe this is an accurate depiction of the one that they would kneel at. But anyway, so somebody, excuse me, Ken Corbett, I guess, painted or drew this depiction of what it may have looked like. This is on bookofmormonevidence.org. So it could be something like this. I don't know. This is just the artist's depiction of it and rendering. But it's kind of exciting to think that when you go to the Kirtland Temple and you see this, or you see pictures of this, it's not arbitrary, and there's a lot of significance to it. It goes all the way back to the very beginning. It goes back to the first man. And you have other temples that have assembly rooms, like the Pioneer era temples, the Salt Lake Temple. It has the same type of thing. So here you have the Salt Lake Temple. This is like that model that they have, that they used to have in the visitor center, the South Visitor Center, of like a cross section of the temple where you can see inside, like a scale model. So here's the assembly room, and you can see they have that same thing. It's like the same pattern. Now you have like this bottom one. It has like 4, right? Because like, okay, let me go to this picture. Okay, so here's the Kirtland Temple. You do have like this bottom level, but then That's not really the same as like these other 3 pulpits up here. The way that it works is this. This is on BYU Religious Center or Religious Studies Center. This is from Kirtland, Ohio, A Guide to Family History and Historical Sources by Kip Sperry. And it explains like the letters that are on the pulpits. So you have MPC, PMH, MHP, and PEM. And so the top one, okay, see him right here. So the very top one, that is Melchizedek Presiding Council, or right here in parentheses, First Presidency of the Church, or stake, I guess if it's like a stake gathering of some kind. So First Presidency, the next one down is Quorum of the 12 Apostles, and then High Priest Quorum, and then after that, Elders. And then it has like these different things. So Melchizedek Presiding Council, First Presidency, presiding Melchizedek High Priesthood for the Quorum of the 12, Melchizedek High Priesthood, High Priest Quorum, and then presiding Elders Melchizedek for the elders, right? So let's look at that again. So let's go to this one. First Presidency at the top, Quorum of the 12, this middle one, the bottom one, High Priests, and then the very bottom one for elders. And then of course you have the ones on the other side. Where is it? Sorry. Then you have the ones on the other side over here for the Aaronic priesthood. So if we go back to this, you have bishop, and then priests, and then teachers, and then deacons. That's what you have on the opposite side. Okay. And so with our some of our now we don't have assembly rooms in each modern temple. There's only, I'm not sure how many, but like the Pioneer era temples. So here's the Salt Lake Temple. Here's another not so great picture of the assembly room. Here's an older picture. This is the Aaronic priesthood side. You can see Aaronic priesthood right here. And then you have like these different levels. And then you have the Washington, D.C. temple. And you can see the style is different with each temple, just how each temple is different. You have the workmanship and the style is different, but it's still the same. You have like the different pulpits and the different levels. So Washington, D.C., here's another depiction of it. Here's the Nauvoo Temple, right? And this one's more in the style of like the Kirtland Temple, but it is different. And then you have a couple blogs right here, templefacts.org and the Mormon Eagle, where there's more on that if you want to check these out. But isn't that so cool that the reason why you have these pulpits, I would assume, is because they're patterned after Adam's altar. That is so neat, isn't it? And you think about how they're assembly rooms, and there's going to be this, or there, at least maybe some of the sessions have already taken place where you have this like large assembly in Adam-ondi-Ahman. If that point comes where like somehow all of us go there, whether supernaturally or otherwise, or whether it's like broadcast, maybe they'll uncover the original stone altars, and those will be there, and Adam will be there, and Christ, and all the prophets, and who knows exactly how it's going to play out. But isn't that kind of interesting to think about the Valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman with the original altars, and how in our temples we have these assembly rooms, places of assembly for instruction, by priesthood leaders. So it's really neat. It's really, really neat. So Christ appearing on top of the quote unquote pulpits, which themselves seem to hearken back to altars. And we know that altars are for sacrifice, and him being the great sacrifice, it's kind of appropriate that he would show up on the pulpits of the pulpit or pulpits of the Kirtland Temple, which really is a depiction of an altar. He's standing on top of the altar. So it's just amazing stuff. So I'm going to continue with President Nelson's talk in future videos. This is probably going to be it for this one, but just such amazing things. I'm so glad that we have access to this information. And again, if you get a chance to go to the Kirtland Temple, I would highly recommend it. It will be worth the money for you to go and travel there and experience it. In other church sites too. All right, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.